The Sustainable Development Goals will do well because India will do well, and because India will do well, the SDGs will do well. No other country in the world does this. Do you know that?
Yes.
Today, no matter where somebody is, the Prime Minister is committed to take each one of you. Between 2011 and 14, we created only one unicorn every year. This figure rose from 2015 onwards. We had 4 new unicorns in 2015, 8 new in 2018, 9 new in 2019, 10 new in 2020, and a whopping 42 new unicorns in 2021.
So the oil price has been touching highs since the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia.
The impact of all these tensions on the oil and gas markets and what will happen if Russia actually does attack.
Price of Russian oil. The G7 group of nations, as well as Australia and the European Union.
Good afternoon. What I'm going to say to you over the next 20 to 30 minutes is, in my view, something that I would describe as the anatomy of a crisis. When we face difficult situations in our lives, when countries face those situations, you end up using words like disruption, which in the English language may have a nuance, but I think that doesn't capture the enormity of the challenge which people have to face. If you're driving at 110 kilometers and you find a boulder in the center of the road, that's a crisis for you. You have to navigate it around it. Now, I think what this first slide intends to convey is that after 1973, this development, Russia, Ukraine, I'm choosing not to use any political descriptions, whether it was an whether it was an attack or the military invasion, whatever, I'm leaving all that out. I'm talking about the hard facts. It created a disruption, or in my view, a crisis which is equal to the 1973 crisis. Why is the 1973 date important? I was still in the university. I was on the teaching faculty of a Delhi University college. Price of crude went up globally from $1 to $3, 3 times increase. What happened in 2022, February? Just to give you a background, we can go to the next slide. Roughly, the world consumes about 100 million barrels of crude oil in a day. Russia, at that point of time, was producing 11 to 13 million barrels. Now, if one country which is producing 11 to 13 million barrels goes off the market, the availability comes down from 100 minus 11 or 13. As it is, Venezuela was under sanction, Iran was under sanction. So if you compound that, you would come to a situation where the global energy situation suddenly changes. So what happened in the world when this happened? One neighboring country, Pakistan, spiraling energy prices, forced people to shut off electricity at 8 p.m. I leave it at that. Sri Lanka, worst economic crisis yet. Then prices went up 80%, 100%. I'm not going to go further into detail. Next slide. What were the options before us? In the period before the Russia-Ukraine development, we were importing on an average something like 5 million barrels of crude oil in a day, which was equally divided between 5 of our suppliers: Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Iraq, and 1 million barrels or 800,000 from all the rest put together. Came this development, and suddenly we found ourselves having to navigate a very difficult circumstance. The options for India were very clear. Either we fall in line with this new development and stick to our original suppliers, in which case the oil price would have gone up. Can we go to the next slide? The one after that? Yeah. No, the one with the $137 per barrel. Now, typically, how does the oil trade work? You have established producers. A large number of the established producers are as part of a cartel. It used to be called OPEC, then it became OPEC Plus, and then there is the world outside. They will tell you, if you ask them, you know, you should reduce the price. I never do, because it's a sovereign right. They have a resource. It's up to them whether they want to sell or leave it underground. They will say, no, we don't deal with price. We only deal with the amount of production we undertake and what we pass on to the market. Now, an undergraduate student of economics will tell you that if you reduce the amount of availability, the price has to be sensitive. So price went up to $137 a barrel, and gas prices went up to $73.56 per MMBTU. Now, even in a small disruption, the actual impact is not created by the buyer and seller. There is something called, where is that paper trade? Paper trade in oil is 30 times higher than physical trade. Now, I would have liked half an hour to explain this to you, but I'm going to simplify it. There are a lot of guys sitting there. When they see this happening, they are able to play the futures and ensure a market which, you know, the poor buyer or seller have very little actual dealing with. So this is the kind of disruption which can take place. Next slide. Now, we had 2 options as per the previous slide. This gentleman, put this gentleman here. He's an US official. Why am I quoting him? Not because he's any authority, but not also because he's a friend. He used to be a counselor in the US mission when I was Joint Secretary on the Americas Division. No, I'm quoting him because it comes from a respectable, credible American official. One of the false narratives we were being subjected to, oh, you're buying oil from Russia. So to which my response was, so once my colleague, the External Affairs Minister, was going to Washington, and he called me, he said, what do I say? I said, if they raise the issue with you, you tell them that they buy more in an afternoon than I buy in a quarter. Now, it so happens that as External Affairs Minister, he gets to take the, association with that kind of a statement, but make no mistake, I am the linear progenitor of that view. And then I said something in addition. I said, listen, wait a minute. What are these sanctions about? I'm not interested. Sanctions can be passed by a country. They can be passed by the UN Security Council. I've presided over the UN Security Council. I've presided over 2 sanction regimes. So I know a little bit about that. What is this about? But I want to quote Mr. Payat to you. He said, India's decision to purchase Russian crude has helped stabilize the international energy markets, benefiting both global consumers and its own citizens through access to affordable fuel. Now, India is not only the world's largest democracy, if Arnab forgives me, it's also the most robust and loud democracy, and I'm not referring to effective TV channels. I'm just saying it's also the mother of democracies. What is the prime responsibility of a democratically elected government? And I'm talking about Modi ka parivar here. And I think the Honorable Prime Minister assumed responsibility and led from up front. Because a democratically elected government has to ensure availability, affordability, and sustainability, which means transition to green fuel. Next slide. So what did we do? You can please have a look at this. This chart is particularly interesting. In Delhi, over a period of November 21 to November 23, price of petrol came down by 11%, 11.82%, nearly 12%. In Spain, it went up by 12.7%, Italy by 11.23%, France by 16.17%, 21.25% increase in the United States. Now, you can tell me that you are probably comparing apples and oranges. Not really. We are looking at the base price and increases, and at a period of relative economic turmoil. What would we do? And what have we done? And I think this is where the Prime Minister deserves not just full credit, but the more appreciation you give, it's not enough. Why? We saw the crisis. You had to ensure availability. We said it doesn't matter from where we import. We diversified the sources of our imports from hitherto 27 countries. We took it to 39. Then, that's the first one, diversification of crude oil imports. Then we stepped on the gas on biofuels and alternate energies. I was part of the government in a different capacity as a civil servant. In the 10 years before 2014, we tried our best on biofuels. And we wanted only 1.5% biofuel blending in 10 of our states and union territories. What happened? We barely reached 1.4%, not 5%. Along came Mr. Modi and said, this has to change. You have to devise an ecosystem whereby 10 and 20% biofuel blending can take place. So he sets a target for November 2022 for 10% blending. Result, we do it 5 months in advance. He sets a target for 20% blending for 2030. We are confident enough to do it 5 years in advance. We will do it by 2025. So ladies and gentlemen, my submission to you is we are doing 12% blending. We have saved 41,000 crores on imports, as a result of which we've been able to hand over 42,400 crores to our farmers. So we've also converted Anndatas to Urja Datas, that those who were providing us food are now providing us energy. Price stabilization. On 2 occasions, November 2021 and May 2022, the Honorable Prime Minister directed that we reduce the amount of excise duty that we charge on petrol and diesel, and we did it. I think you have a slide which, yes. Central excise duty cut 13 rupees per litre for petrol, 16 rupees per litre for diesel, reduced twice on such and such days. Revenue foregone 2.2 lakh crores. But that was compounded by the BJP state-ruled states also reducing their VAT. Result, India's petrol and diesel prices were amongst the lowest in the world. What was the impact of that? The impact is, if you compare a BJP-ruled state and a non-BJP-ruled state, at that point of time, Lucknow and Bangalore, a difference of rupees 5.37 per litre. And nobody fills a tank with just 1 litre. You fill it with 30 or 40. You see the price impact there. Similarly, Guwahati and Kolkata, Panaji and Amravati, Lucknow and Amravati, this is diesel. So these are self-explanatory. Please move on. I just want to come back to the slide where, I'll come to the neighborhood in a minute. Come to the slide which shows that the domestic situation, what we were able to, not this one, yeah, no, this is the next one, the good corporate citizens. Now, when you reduce excise duty and your revenue foregone is something to the tune of more than 2 lakh crores, somebody has to take the hit. Government is foregoing revenue. You want to ensure availability and affordability at the retail point. So what happens? Our OMCs, or oil marketing companies, played the role of good corporate citizens. They could have said, we are answerable to our shareholder, we are answerable to our boards, and we will not. No, they came forward and said, we will maintain the price line. which meant that they took under recoveries both in petrol and diesel. Yes, they incurred losses. Yes, they incurred losses. In the case of gas, I think they incurred a loss of 28,000 crores. When the situation improved, we stepped in, told the finance ministry, got government approval to reimburse them about 22,000 crores out of the 28,000 they had lost. They didn't crib, they went along. On petrol, I think they lost about 30,000 crores. And we said, no, you said marketing decision, etc. But he said, we'll help you. We'll help you because we will provide you equity so that, your revenues are sustained. So that operational profitability. Now, I just want to tell you one story. He is fast forwarded because I think, when I became petroleum and natural gas minister, actually I should be called the energy transition minister, but I don't know. Let's leave it at the terminology. BPCL was up for what you call disinvestment. That's when I ever heard the word divestment. Also, I have my learned friends that tell you we also use the word privatization, etc. And I think what that tells you, BPCL has achieved 75% of the anticipated disinvestment proceeds with a mere 9 months of a single year. In other words, if you were to sell it at 30,000 crores or something, the profit in the first one, profit after tax, is nearly 22,500 crores in 9 months. See the change. Now somebody asks me, people are very happy. They want to think, oh, the market ke karan hua. Show them the slide, the market slide also. So when I'm asked, and I have no humility in pointing this out because the credit goes to these guys, saying, yeah, the market has risen, that's what they have risen. Hey, wait a minute. Market has risen where? 39%. Whereas BPCL risen 43%, GAIL 70%, HPCL 72%, ONGC 125%, IOCL 153%, EIL 189%, and Oil India 215%. So other than the market, somebody must have done something right. And I tell you, I'm very happy. I'm very happy to say I had nothing to do with it. But at least the oil marketing companies give them credit. So when I use the word, when I use the word good corporate citizen, that is what good corporate citizenry is all about, with a helpful secretary and a helpful minister. Let's go forward. Now, biofuels, I'll skip. Two decisions which we took, I think, bear some mention. One is that the previous period, by the previous period, in calendars you have before Christ, and I'm not going into that. I'm not going. One thing that Modi ji's government has been characterized by is absolutely bold decision making. Let me give it to you in a nutshell. Total amount of sedimentary basin we have is about 3.5 million square kilometers. When I became minister, I said, hey, what's the point of having a sedimentary basin if you can't get to the sediment in the basin? Sorry, I just play with words. Now, what we did was, thanks to the Prime Minister and very bold decision making, 1 million square kilometers of that sedimentary basin, which was a no-go area, has been opened up for investment. And what you're seeing today as a result is that new finds there. Now you'll see the story unfold. So that's the one. Recently, I was with the previous one. I was with the Prime Minister in Begusarai, and this last one was one of the projects there, because 35 kilometers, I think, off the coast of Kakinada in Andhra Pradesh, we found oil, which was found earlier, and that, what is it called, an FPSU. It was ready, the fully loaded ship was ready to take off. Now, it had been loaded, we were waiting for the Prime Minister to have an event, and he flagged it off. Now, what I want you to note is, at a time when we've got massive import dependence, this facility will produce 40 to 50,000 barrels of oil in a day, as early as the next 2 months. It will also produce gas from there. So, this is going to increase our domestic production by 7%, just this facility. Now, I want to go to biofuels. I've already done, but I just want to give you one comment. What does SAF mean? SAF means Sustainable Aviation Fuel. Now, as you know, some time ago, I had flagged a flight from Pune to Delhi, I think it was Air Asia, which used 1% sustainable aviation fuel. The world itself knows that as we go forward, not only because of ICAO in the International Civil Aviation Organization, but otherwise, we will have to go into sustainable aviation fuel. But if the European Union mandates a 5% blend, which it is likely to do, there are only 2 countries in the world, I submit, where sustainable aviation fuel in that quantity can be produced. One is Brazil and the other is India. So I went to Pune. It was 30 degrees Celsius, and I'd come back from minus 18 degrees in Davos the previous day. So the climate change impact apart, I went to a place where they actually inaugurated a sustainable aviation fuel pilot project. I've given you a flavor of this. I want to now go to green hydrogen for a minute. You don't have green hydrogen here? You do. Now, why do I always go on saying that green hydrogen is the fuel of the future? 2 reasons. Because green hydrogen typically requires an ability to produce clean, green solar energy at competitive prices, and it requires electrolyzers. We have demonstrated that you can bring down the cost of clean solar energy from 25 cents a unit to 3 cents a unit. Then you need an electrolyzer. I'm going to fast forward this. During the India Energy Week in Bengaluru in February, the Honorable Prime Minister visited a stall put up by BPCL where a domestically produced electrolyzer was available, which cost 30% less than any imported ones. This is the kind of innovation which is taking place in our country. Gas, I want to come to a previous slide where we'll talk about gas. Now, one of the, let me simplify this. There are 2 kinds of gas that we are dealing with here. I know there are many other kinds of gases, but they're outside our purview this afternoon. The 2 I'm dealing with is the gas, liquefied petroleum gas, which comes in a cylinder, which is made kache tel se, crude oil. And then there is the natural gas. LPG is one thing we have had. It started in the 50s. Today, 60 years later, in 2014, we only had 14 crore cylinders connections in the country. Today, the Prime Minister's policies have led that 14 crores to become 32 crores. We introduced an Ujjwala scheme for our economically weaker sections, and we've already done more than 10 crore connections under Ujjwala. So that is affordable cooking gas, so that our sisters go away from, fossil fuels, from coal, wet wood, etc., kerosene in the kitchen. But you also have natural gas. What used to happen is that their earlier pricing, that slide with the floor, we used to base it on 4 hubs. And there used to be a 1-year time lag between the determination and the price. So we stopped that immediately, put in a 15-day period, removed the hubs, tied it to the Indian crude basket, introduced a floor and a ceiling. And today, suddenly, the natural gas prices are down. This is the kind of innovation that the Modi... See, when we talk of Modi ka parivar, it is ultimately that parivar which is the beneficiary of this thing. I mean, to some of my King Kong friends developing these highly successful people, gas prices probably will not matter. But believe me, to the common man, it did. When he went for the Ayodhya Ram temple consecration, he visited the home of a beneficiary of Ujjwala, Meera Manji. And this was a household which had been a beneficiary of some scheme. They got Ujjwala on then, and also some of the other scheme. That is where it matters the most. Okay, fast forward now. I think I'll need to... Next. I want to come for a minute to some of these. Compressed biogas, we are making very impressive strides. I think I'm going tomorrow for an inauguration of a plant in Gorakhpur. My oil marketing companies, we are very proud of them. 100 plants they're setting up in UP itself. Another 100 are already set up, but we have to scale this up. Because compressed biogas is something that we have available in plenty. It's only a question of operationalizing those plants. Electric vehicles, I don't need to tell you, it's a story open in every press. Every manufacturer is bringing in newer models of electric vehicles. The debate is whether it's electric vehicles with fossil fuels or electric vehicles with ethanol. My view is give it a little time, it'll be electric vehicles with ethanol. Fossil fuels, I've already told you, net zero, I'll come in a minute. I want to spend a minute on the Global Biofuels Alliance. Today, if there is any form of clean energy which lends itself to implementation on a large scale, I think it's global biofuels. I have an industry in Pune, which has an industry group, which has already set up 1,000 biofuels plants in 100 countries. And all the biofuels plants running in our country, including the 2G1, are indigenous manufacture. Except the 3G1, which uses waste gases from a refinery in order to be able to, that is an American technology, but all the rest is domestic. So I was telling my friend who's now dealing with climate change, etc., that actually that is the place to go to. Countries in Africa, Latin America, they should emulate the example of countries like Brazil, which have great successes in biofuels. And I think biofuels, the story has just started. When we go into sustainable aviation fuels, we'll go through. But just a word on green hydrogen, because I skipped it. Why will green hydrogen succeed in India? Because you need an environment where there is local demand, local production, and local consumption. And India satisfies that along with countries like China and the United States. Fast forward. Well, I think it's pretty clear that our rate of energy consumption is about 3 times the global average, which is a sign that the economy is firing on all 6 cylinders, which is also a sign that the economy, you know, when energy consumption reduces, you are sure that something is going wrong. That's the case of the world's second largest economy, where there's suddenly plateauing demand or reduction of demand. And finally, how much money do you need? Well, we are taking the mix of gas in our energy mix from 6% to 15%. It will require something like $66 billion in the next 5 years or less, and believe me, it's happening. And we set up an India Energy Week, which we had the 2nd edition in Goa. A standalone campus is being created there. It'll be one of the world's best conference tourism sites. It's a 250-acre plot. This year we only used 18,000 square meters. Next one, which we have after the next one is in Delhi, the one after that in 26 will be I think something like 75,000. It's already a global event and it's going to grow bigger as we go along. Okay? We will become the refining hub of the world. Why? We've already got 252 million metric tons per annum. We are taking it to 310 metric tons per annum soon, and the Prime Minister talks about 450. I've always been advised to slow down. Will you reach so many of refineries? Yes, we will. Because I think all the world's refineries will not be operational. There'll just be 3 or 4 refining hubs in the world, and India will be one of them. Next is thank you very much.
Minister Puri, good afternoon this side. When Minister Ashwini Vaishnav was making that presentation, I thought not many TED-talking ministers in the world, but it seems all of them are in the Council of Ministers of the country, you know. Fantastic Goldilocks moment for Indian economy, and some of which you captured in the presentation. I have a political question. I'm a political journalist.
I would be surprised that working with my college friend Arnab and a channel like Republic, that you would confine yourself to energy. The questions have to be political.
Yeah, I mean...
but energy is political also.
It's absolutely
Just
political.
imagine if prices had gone up and availability had not been there, what kind of politics the opposition would have subjected us to.
But it's so fantastic. That's why I'm trying to focus on politics, because somehow, it's my reading, maybe many might agree here, it's sort of getting boring because it's so one-sided. Your 2 predictions for the 2024 general elections, because we thought that it's getting a little boring because it's so one-sided.
So basically, for those of you who didn't hear him totally clear, he's asking me to make a prediction for the 2024 election. I'll tell you something. Anyone who watches my social media feed or what I've been saying, I start by saying I'm not a soothsayer, I'm not an astrologer, but I have a reasonable and long-standing experience in predicting elections, and I don't predict them out of a crystal ball. I predict them on the basis of what I see on the ground. In 2014, I had said that the BJP under Mr. Modi will get an absolute majority after many years. Came true. In 2019, I had predicted that we will cross the 300 mark, and we did. We reached 303. Before I make a prediction, let me say something that I have seen on the ground. The real story in the 2024 elections is the complete change narrative and the groundswell that I'm seeing in parts of the country which you normally do not associate with the BJP. I mentioned the southern states. I see the vote share of the BJP going up considerably there, and I see the situation in West Bengal. These are 2 pointers I would suggest to anyone wanting to make a political prediction, because we can come to the predictions later. What is my view? I think in West Bengal, I took a press conference on that yesterday. I think the women voters, after they've been subjected to the kind of atrocities in Sandesh Khali, they will give an answer to the TMC from the ballot box. Point 1. Point 2, in the southern states, I spent a lot of time in places like Palakkad, other places. There's something very different happening there. I saw a report today that a former chief minister's daughter has joined the BJP. This is just a small pointer, but what I see in interaction, I've been going to a lot of events which have under 25-year-old, those who are the first-time voters, and I see a major change in response there. I did a workshop, where was it, in Bangalore. It was a workshop of BJP spokesman in training. They kind of changed the atmosphere. Exact number, I would not. I think we should wait, because an election typically has the processes consolidating about a week or 2 before that. Now we are a few days off from the election, this thing, but my prediction on the basis of the trends I'm saying, you're going to have the Honorable Prime Minister lead the country for another 10 years. You're going to have the BJP, which is already the world's largest party, also being the largest conveyor of goods and services to the common, to those who need them most, to the most vulnerable sections of society. And number 3, I think if this trend in the opposition continues, then I think a lot more people will join the BJP. Now you can ask me, is that good or bad? I frankly don't know. But I think people come to and gravitate towards a political party because they see, not only for themselves, but they see through the party an opportunity for Samaj Seva, Desh Seva. And I think Mr. Modi has been able to drive one message very firmly home, that good governance is good politics. Today we are talking to people on the basis of what they've received and on the basis of what more likely is to come in the years ahead.
Thank you so much, Minister Sir, for your vision of the energy landscape for the future. Ladies and gentlemen, our change maker, the Honorable Minister. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. To reinforce the energy in the hall, ladies and gentlemen,